All right. I am going to get started. I'm going to continue my series where I go through, just make sure this is working. Cool. Okay. So I'm going to continue my series where I work on trying to make an online version of this in development Planet Money game. Um, so last time, to recap, um, I'm going to be using Cloudflare Durable Objects to sort of keep track of rooms and room state. I am going to be using WebSockets to sort of handle that room communication. And I'm going to use XState to manage the sort of state of the games and sort of track the differences between the server state, sort of the top level state. And then the clients are each going to have their own XState uh, state machines that manage the client's view of the state and any sort of local game state. And using a React router. Um, first stream, I sort of got some of the basic stuff set up, but nothing, didn't really go too much further. Just got sort of the durable object, everything laid out sort of the way I'm was expecting. The second time, I looked more into these rules. So these are the rules of the game. It's still an in development process. They sort of were talking about it on a recent episode. If you're not familiar, Planet Money is a NPR podcast that talks about economics, and this game is based on a paper called The Market for Lemons, which is about cars and has to do with, it's an economics paper. It has to do with asymmetric information. So it seems like an interesting, fun game. And I thought it could be cool to try to make a version of it that you could play online. So kind of last time we just went through the rules that are laid out. Here they are. I copied them over into Markdown. There is so 2 to 6 players. There are special rules for the 2-player version. We're going to ignore those for now. And stuff about, play tests. I think this could be good. The basic version, I just want to get something small working, but then from there we can sort of expand out into, chat. Communicating is sort of part of the game. Like part of it has to do with like creating deals, offering deals, accepting deals, and there's some back and forth where, at least at the basic level, there isn't going to be a way to do that. So one option to expand from there will be adding in chat, adding in voice, something like that. Obviously adding in the 2-player version, a few other things. And another interesting thing would be the playtesting side of it. So part of the whole, like, this is a beta version of the game. So part of what they're asking is down here for you to record your playtest, and this is over audio. They're asking for voice memos. So if this could, if we can get this up and running, it could be cool to be able to give them, they could look at some stats overall of how the game works, how people are playing it, what is and isn't working, all that sort of thing. So I think where we're going to jump back in is looking at the state machine. So I did, if you look over, this out of the way. This can go here and here. Just chatting with Claude and passing in the rules, and it gave me this sort of it gave me this mermaid chart graph here of sort of the possible playthrough of how things might connect. So this is going to be representing kind of the server state. And basically the gist of it is you go through, each person, gets a turn being it cycles around who the buyer is. And everyone else who isn't the buyer offers deals of cards from their hands. Each one's, some have value like point value plus or minus, or their special action cards. So if you're not the buyer, you pick, a few cards, put them face down, and that's your deal. And then you flip one of them up. I can't remember. I think you choose one of those to flip up. Pick the cards in hand, place them face down. Then they each flip one of the 3 cards face up. So there's some information out there. Once everyone has put out a deal, flip 1 card in any deal. So then the buyer gets to pick, of all the other hands, one of the extra face down cards to flip up. So game start, let's say, you enter in here, buyer, someone has the buyer totem, which is who is the buyer that round. All the other players offer deals. So we're gonna have to wait for those all to be locked in. Then transition over into buyer flips, picks one of those to flip over. So once those are all locked in and revealed, the sets of 3 and 1 flipped for each, buyer gets to pick a non-flipped one and reveal that. Then the next step is actions. So there are some black cards that have actions like, here we go. Put that in preview mode. Oh, we can only have one at a time. Okay. Who knew? Okay, whatever. So we'll pull game rules back up. These are the cards. There's some action cards. Flip 1. And these are, flip 1, discard all, add 1, steal a chip. And the chips are points. So these are the action cards. So this first action window, anyone can play actions. That's going to be something interesting. We're just putting an asterisk there. In the part of the game where you're playing actions, we're going to have something like, we're going to have to figure out the best way to do that, because, one option would be, anyone can, since this is sort of concurrent, happening on different, decks, different clients, all synchronized, you're going to be able to submit actions and the server will have to coordinate. But, one option would be to sort of stack them up or queue them up and say, first in, first out. If you submit an action, it goes, and the action may be, any one of these. But if I'm, my action comes in second, like say, another player plays a flip 1 on a card, and I also coincidentally picked that same card to be a flip 1, my action would then not work. So, or if they flip this card, I didn't realize which one they were going to flip, and if they did, then mine would be, maybe I would want to change mine after seeing what they did. So we're going to have to sort of, it may have to like fail based on if someone else is playing an action, but we'll see about that. Okay. So yeah, that's going to be a little loop there of action window, play an action, loop around until, you know, you're going to have a play an action or don't play an action. And until everyone says don't play an action, then we'll keep cycling there. That's another thing I wonder about. Maybe we can think about more later is haven't done something like this before with sort of this live game WebSockets. I wonder if maybe there's something around like timeouts and things like that. Um, how do you make that so it's not, I don't know, too crazy? Is it like you have one admin player and they're the one who's going to control, like, okay, it's been long enough if you haven't played an action by now? Or do we do a timeout? How do you do something like that? Timers, like, that sort of thing. So anyway, okay. So then action cycle, then accept the deal. Back to the rules here. Nope, not that. Game rules. Preview of game rules. Action cards accepting a deal. That's where, is this where the back and forth is happening? I guess that makes sense. So once the actions are done beforehand, any of that stuff, you can talk back and forth and pick which deal you want to, the buyer picks which deal they want. Continue there. You could chat. That sort of, I think from this game side of it is sort of nothing really happens there. Then deal, you see here, I'm ready to accept a deal. The buyer accepts, says they're ready to accept one, then actions again. I don't know if you can just play actions this whole time here. I'm not really sure how that works. But let's just say for now, no, and it's phase 1, phase 2. Another action cycle here. And then once everyone is done, resolve the deal. So that means the way it works is the buyer accepts, picks one of those sets. All the other people offering deals keep their cards and they go into their collection. So this sort of resolution phase, all that's happening is that accepted deal cards go to the collection of the buyer, and all the other non-accepted deal cards go to the respective offerers' collections. Then the other part of it is point scoring. So for number cards, for example, there's green, which are positive ones, and red, which are negative ones. If you have, you sort of count up, if you have, I think it says in here, trading in cards. So anytime you have a green card in your collection, anytime you have green cards in your collection, so your collection is like the face-up cards in front of you. That total 10 or more. So if you have greens, the total 10 or more, those get moved to the discard pile, and you cash those in for a green chip. If you have red cards that total 10 or more, you also cash those in and put one green chip back into the middle of the table. So then you give back one of your cards. When trading in green cards or red cards, you choose which specific cards to discard. So I think that's a little misleading. Anytime you have cards that total 10 or more, or maybe not. I don't know. It seems like if I'm reading this correctly, you pick any amount of cards as long as it's 10 or more. So if that's right, then if you have green cards that add up to, say you have what I'm making up 19, let's say you have greens that add up to 19, or you have reds that add up to 19 after the end of the resolution phase. You would want to only cash in 10 of the greens so that you're one away from your next one, or you would want to cash in as many red ones as you want, so all 19, so that you end up with a lower, you're like min-maxing that. Cool. So that's the resolution. You checked that, then you're done. Check to see, make sure everyone, make sure everything's resolved correctly. Points are done and everything. People redraw until they get to 5. I guess maybe we'll put that in resolving the deal. Ending your turn. No cards left. So the shuffling, that's all sort of part of the resolution. Shuffle the cards in the discard pile to form a new draw pile and keep playing. And then winning the game. So shuffling, reforming your deck if you run out of cards to draw. Winning the game. If someone has 5 or more green chips at the end, they win. If you have more than one, the person with the most wins. Doesn't say if you have a tie how you handle that, but let's just say you both win. Great. Okay, so that's just the rules, and I think this chart does a good job of mapping that out. The second part of it we have is this. So here are some types. Let's just put them in here. So I just started on my own and did this with the cards. But I think this seems like an interesting alternative to have a card type that looks like this. And something else we may or may not want to do is put IDs on, because there's multiple. If we look in cards here, there are 10 green 1s, 14 green 3s. So we may want to put for each one, make sure there's a unique number of cards for tracking the cards as they go through or whatever. I don't know if that really matters, but maybe we'll start with just put the right counts in and don't worry about it. But so this game state here, so these game phases I think match our mermaid chart, right? Offer deals, buyer flips card, action window, first or final, accept deal, action window again. Resolving deal, and has winner, I guess, is part of resolving deal. Submitted deals. So then we have sort of the state information, which is the deck. Maybe we call that draw versus discard. But whatever, deck versus discard. So this is it starts with fully shuffled deck in there. Then it gets dealed out. Discard is the discard. Players, who are the current players? Let's look at player. Has an ID, has a name. Cool, whatever, you'll put that in. Hand, what cards do they have? Collection. So hand is face down, only the user can see their own hand. Collection, everyone can see each other's collections. Chips is the number of those green, token points. And players, current buyer, index. So we'll say that's how you find within this player list array who the current buyer is. Available chips, I don't think that's important in a digital version where you can have unlimited ones, I think. But whatever, we'll keep it in for now. Phase, which game phase? And then each of those have some state as well. So my thought is this will kind of end up being in our state machine. This will be, we have our states, which represent these game phases. And then, let's see if I still have a tab open for this. The context will be kind of the rest of this. The context stores, the deck, that sort of thing. And then we're going to have guards, actions, yeah, okay. So part of this is going to be me learning more about XState and how this works. My thought is, you're going to have this sort of, each state machine is going to work on its own, but also fire off each sort of action transition will fire off events as well to the connected state machines. So a client state machine, you do something like play a card, you can possibly optimistically make that change, but you can also, but at the same time, it will fire off that same state to the server, which will then try to reconcile and, did someone else play one ahead of time and yours failed, or it's not your turn, so you can't play one, or whatever. Those are some of those guards. But otherwise, it will apply that to the server and pass it back to you and to all the other clients. Okay. So yeah, guards will, that sort of is going to be some of the rules around, you can't move, you can only move from one phase to the next phase. Correct, based on the state, based on all that sort of stuff. So, okay. I think the next step is let's line this up with the state machine. And just put some of these in here. Import game state. So I think we can just say game state. Let's say that for now. Create machine. I don't know, but I think I don't know if we should make these, or if part of it, if like we set up first and then when the server is initialized, or when a room is initialized, maybe that's when some of this context should get called. There's also in cards here, or somewhere I put a shuffle, so we can just, fill the deck and then shuffle it. let's see. Maybe we'll skip that. Okay. All right, I am going to, let's just say we will skip the create for now. I'm just going to comment that out. I'm going to comment this out. Game state type events. Events and transitions. Transition is change from one finite state to another triggered by an event. Event is a signal trigger. Take them and exclude their actions. Transitions are deterministic. What is the difference between eventless and events? If that's where if the difference is just we need, putting guards in between, then we do need that. Root self transitions. Without explicit event, these transitions are always taken when the transition is enabled. Always state property, often referred to as always transitions. If their guards are true. This makes eventless transitions helpful in doing things when some condition is true. Okay, so I wonder when to use. Eventless transitions can be helpful when a state change is necessary. There's no specific trigger for that change. I guess it's the idea that it automatically happens, maybe? Because in that case, I think we do need events, because events are going to be like, submitted from elsewhere. Okay. Selecting transitions. Where is the setup version? Add input, context, input. Maybe that, I wonder if context. Maybe if we do this. Okay, and how do you define that type? Setup. Input. Setup types. Is input one of these? Yep. Okay. Cool. So that's good. And then when we do, I think when you create the actor, that's when state machine actors, that's when you pass in the input. State machine actor input. Cool. So input will have, I think it kind of just will have the same game state. Ooh. Right, input.gamestate. Because it could either be a new game that's starting, or it could be, initializing a game that's being continued or something like that. And that, we'll get into like persistence for storing it. But I think we can go back to context events. Okay. Events are going to be these, I think, right? Or the events are going to be the transition, the triggers for this. So that is going to have the state there. Let's fill in the state first. State. In setup, can you define the states? I guess let's just do it in here and see if that works. States. So I think we're just going to start with these, and then if we need to get more specific with any of them, like, offering deals started or offering deals ready, or, I don't know, whatever. But, and let's see if there's any sort of state. Let's go back to state. I think there's sort of a convention. Context children can matches output, blah, 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 blah. Or maybe that's events. We'll name them the way we have it in here. Offering deals. Buyer flips card. Action window first. Accepting deal. Action window final. Resolving deal. Should we have a start and end, maybe? Game start, game end. Okay. States. Like having the states have spaces in them seems a little crazy, but maybe that's just me. Okay, so in this example, I have to figure out the sort of transitions and stuff between them. Offering deals. So I kind of think, I wonder if, like, what is the event that transitions from offering deals to buyer flips card? Because it's kind of like there's going to be, for however many, let's say at least 2 people in our, since we're not doing the 2-person version for right now. Excuse me, let's say, so in our 2-person, or, at least 2 people offering deals. Person 1 is going to offer a deal, like submit a deal. Person 2 is going to submit a deal. Then based on that, we determine, once it's filled, then we move on to the next one. So what is that? Like, it's the same event, but it may or may not transition. I guess, if that is how that works. Some of this I'm sort of just, I don't know, not totally sure how this is working. So it's going to be a learning process, whether this is actually just how I'm thinking this works or if this is actually how it works. Okay, states question on target. Thanks. Okay. So on feedback.good, transition to thanks. Re-entering on states, some state, entry, exit. By default, when a state machine transitions from some state to some state, or from a parent state to a descendant, child, grandchild, etc., of the parent state, it will not re-enter. Self transitions. So let's look there. Okay. Context. So that's updating the context. But how do you decide where to go? Setting the target. Selecting transitions. Checking the deepest child states first. Okay, so maybe that's what the answer is going to be, is maybe there's going to be a guard that says, do we have all of the offers filled in? If not, then it stays in the same state. Let's pull up guards. Guard, okay. And the guard goes on this current state. So guard's out of it. Is that condition function that the machine checks when it goes through an event? So states form on submit. Feedback length greater than 0. Okay. So on submit, make sure it's valid, and if it is, transition to submitting. So game start on, what are we going to call this? Deal offer deal. You don't have to quote that. Offer deal is just one. The guard is going to be I don't think we need that because we already know we're in. Oh, sorry, I'm putting this in the wrong one. That would help. Offering deals. Here we go. On offer deal. Maybe it should say, whatever. On offer deal, the guard is context dot. So how are we explaining this? So if we want to make sure that it's full, I guess, how do you do the call? Like how do you mutate? I guess I just saw that. Where is that? On event actions. So we need a guard, we need an action, and we need a target. Target is, let's just say return true for now. Target is no. Offering is who? Cursor's not really following this. The target for all of them is just going to be the same, the next one, basically, I think. Buyer flips card. On flip, the guard's going to be like, make sure the card is face down. Action window, I guess we can figure out what that is. Actions. We need to import assign. Actions is assign game state let's wrap that. It's going to be the same game state, but yeah, maybe we shouldn't keep the phase in there. Whatever, it doesn't matter for now. Let's, oh, but we have to have phase context in there. Sure, let's do that. Phase becomes that. Game phase. Offering deals has submitted deals. So this is the thing that we're checking in the guard. What's the error there? All right, whatever. We'll come back to that. So the guard needs to check. We need to check is that even, can that player offer a deal? Are they the buyer? Are they the current buyer, so they can't offer a deal? Have they already offered a deal? Yeah, let's do that. How's that look? If they're the current buyer, they can't offer a deal. Okay, what else? Do they have 5 cards? I guess that doesn't really matter. Let me zoom that in a little bit. We want to see, I don't know, is that kind of it? I think that might be everything, right? If they already have, they can't. So let's check that. If index of event.player. Yeah, I guess, do we have a, I guess we didn't do that yet. Events. Where are we defining events in here? Question, thanks, ID, feedback. I think we still have to figure out what the sort of, I don't know, what is the naming convention there? Event type and additional payload. So let's go into offer deal. What is this? Property type is missing. Okay. Type is offer deal. Feedback.update, feedback.good, feedback.update. That doesn't sound right. State setup. Events. Type inc. On inc. Events. Context on. Feel like I'm missing something there. Property type is missing in type offer deal. Oh, okay. It's not a, I see. Offer deal. We're just doing that. It's just a union of all the. How's that going to look best? Offer deal, and it's also going to have player ID, and it's going to have deal, which is going to be, what is a deal? Oh, I already did that. Let's import deal. So the deal already has revealed. I don't know if that's how we want to do that. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so this is where the action cards, I guess, are kind of making it a little tricky. So the deal, so remember the player is offering a deal, picking from their hand of 5 cards, 3 that they will potentially offer. Those go face down. And then of those, they get to pick one of them to flip face up. So then the buyer looks at those plus the other players that are offering deals. And of all of the face down cards, they can pick one to also flip up. So we could use that. This makes sense. This is from Claude, but having an array showing which cards are revealed or not, I guess that makes sense. And in that first offer, one of them is going to be revealed. Because if we look back here, offering deals, only that first one is going to be revealed. Then from there, right? Yeah. Then there could be more cards in there or less cards because of the actions. So if we look back at the rules, the action cards, let's look at the cards. Download prototype. All right. Let me close some of these. Okay. So we have the point cards, and then in here, we have the action cards, these black cards. So flip one, discard this card so you play it. The buyer accepts a deal. Anytime before the buyer accepts a deal, flip one card in any deal face up. Kind of sounds like you can play these. I wasn't totally sure from reading the rules, but it sounds like you can kind of play, we don't, right now the way I have it is there are phases of action window before, accept the deal, action window after. But it kind of just seems like anywhere between here and here, you can do that. And in the rules, the buyer says like, I'm ready to accept, last chance to play action cards. If nobody plays action cards, the buyer totem goes to the player whose deal you want to take. Doesn't say what happens if they do play action cards, if they still have to pick that one. Flip one card in any deal face up. Discard one, discard this card, including you, puts a deal on the table, put one card in that deal in the discard pile. So that could be, you could have fewer cards in there. That's why it's saying 0 to 4 plus. Add one. Put one card from your hand face down into a deal. So it's saying 0 to 4 plus. I guess realistically, at most it would be the 3 cards you put in plus 4 here, right? So 7 max. I don't know if that matters, but steal a chip, discard all, discard one, flip one. Okay. So I think we'll keep that for now as revealed, and then this can be reused if we're keeping with this version of it of action window before, pick the deal, action window after. Then yeah, I thinking about it more, I feel like, that's interesting to think about if we want to have this be sort of a floating state of like deal making, and in there you can get events that are either action events or announcing that you're ready to pick a deal. I don't know exactly which is better. Let's just leave it as is for now. And yeah, deal seems reusable, so that's good. Offer deal, pass in a deal. It's going to have the player ID, so we want to make sure context, game state, current buyer index. So if the current buyer index is equal to event dot where's my type completion? Oh, well, I don't have an event, so that's why. Event dot deal dot player ID. Oh, current buyer index. Let's say, I feel like current buyer index should be the ID of the user, not the index, actually. Current buyer ID string. Cool. And let's just say, if the player offering the deal is a current buyer, they can't offer a deal. Okay. And now here, if the game state.phase that's submitting deals. Okay. So if in the phase, this is where I wonder if we should move these deals out. So if I wonder if the deals should be in here separate from, I'm going to do that, but I'm just going to say, I'm just going to store that for now and say we're going to put deals in here, and I should be able to, we probably don't need submitted and deals, right? And last action, I don't think we need either. I think it would be maybe like that's also something interesting. I think maybe having something like the history of events, um, and maybe that's actions, um, or is it just like looking through the discard pile? Like I'm just trying to think how that would sort of translate to if you are like if you're just playing the game for real with paper IRL, then you don't have like anything written down anywhere. You just have the discard pile maybe that you could look through. But let's just do that. So we're gonna say regular game state, and this is gonna be like round state. So we're gonna have deals, and maybe we make that optional because it's not always gonna be there, and maybe we can fix these types up to be a little better later on. Let's say, what is played action? What did we put there? Player ID, card ID. Which action card? Action type. And target. Deal and card. Deal. That's interesting. I don't know. Okay. That might get tricky if we're like tracking, like putting IDs on deals, or maybe not. I don't know. Let's say, what am I building? I'm building, so Planet Money, if you're familiar, is NPR podcast / show. They came out with a board game that they're sort of like testing. Just in sort of like early development, but it's, they put out a bunch of rules, this sheet of rules. Here are the game, game pieces and cards. And so I'm trying to use XState, Cloudflare Durable Objects, to try to make that game something you could play online. So going through, I made this sort of mermaid chart with kind of the states for the game. And I'm trying to translate that into my XState state machine. So I really haven't done much with XState before. So I'm just kind of going through the docs as I go. We're working through these event types now, and just sort of how I'm going to store the game state in the context here. And then, I guess that'll be synced in the durable object storage per room. So some of this I just, had a Claude Code make, but I think it set this stuff up of game state and then phases, and then each of the phases has its own additional like context. But I don't know if that is going to line up exactly how I feel like we'll make it the most make sense when I'm working with it through XState. So I think I'm going to pull out the deals. So basically how it works is you sort of go around in a circle, who is the buyer for 3 or more people. One person's the buyer. The other people will make deals of like 3 cards, put them face down. One of those they'll flip face up. And then the buyer has to pick one of those to accept. And it could be either green cards, which end up being, positive points or scores or whatever. Red cards, negative points. And that all goes into your collection, which sort of tallies up into coins that you then, if you get 10 or more green, add up to 10 or more greens in your collection, you get a coin. And if you get 5 coins, you win. If you get 10 or more red points in your collection, you then lose a coin. And then there are also action cards like flip 1, discard all, add 1, steal a chip. So I think I am going to, I think I'm just gonna pull these out. And I can just keep the phase in there. I don't think we need that either, but we can leave it in for right now. And then the action history is interesting. I don't know if that's going to be helpful to have in there. Accepted deal index. I think that would. If we get to, when we get into, so the person accepting the deal, there's sort of a window before and after, where anyone, the buyer or the people offering the deals, can play actions. Once this person picks a deal to accept. And I think the rules aren't totally clear there about how that works. Accepting a deal. Before you make a choice, ask a question, blah, blah. When you pick a deal to accept, you must say, I'm ready to accept a deal. Last chance to play action cards. If nobody plays an action card, the buyer totem goes to the player whose deal you want to take. Then all 3 cards in the deal, then take all 3 cards in the deal and flip them face up into your collection. So I'm not sure what happens if someone does play an action card, if you then, go back into picking a deal to accept, or you have the chance to say like, wait, I want this other deal instead. But we'll just go, whatever, hand wave that for now. And just put a placeholder here and say, like action history. And get rid of that. Okay. So in our guard, oops. Okay, are they offered the deal? Or if they're the buyer, they can't offer a deal. If they've already offered a deal, they can't. Deals. Cool. That makes sense. Otherwise, accept it. If they have 5 cards in their hand, they can't offer a deal. That's not right. Otherwise, they can't offer a deal. And in assign, we want event.deal. We need to put in here events as offered deal. I don't know why that doesn't. I think this event should be, I guess I don't know why the types aren't showing up there for that. Because it should just be because we have game state here, it should just be, right? I don't know. Okay, we'll try that out. Target buyer flips card. So in here, that's where all the offerers have offered deals, and you're waiting for, they're all locked in. Each one has one of the offerers they've each picked one of the cards to flip up. Then the buyer gets to pick one additional card, one total to flip face up of all of those face down cards. So in here, what are we going to call that? Okay, we have this. Flip card. Deal index, card index. And we need to make sure. I wonder about if we're getting extra context from the, we need to have stuff like, I don't know how this is going to necessarily connect between the, XState working and the server, where that extra context is going to come in. Because we also need to make sure the player ID string. We also need to make sure that the person flipping the card is the buyer. But now we can't just plop in the payload directly from the request. And should this be deal index, or should this be like the ID of the player that you're flipping, which makes more sense? Player ID, deal player ID, and we can skip that. So does that make sense? I think so. All right. Let's add our guard in there. Zoom this up. Buyer flips card on flip card. Should this go in there? Is that part of that issue? Offer deal. Yeah, I think so, right? This should all go in here. There we go. Event. Now the type completion's working. Okay, well, that makes sense. Guard, context event. Then we want actions. Sign. And target. Action window first. Yeah, I'm really starting to think we should merge these. But I'm not 100% sure. I feel like it would make sense to merge them. Like, if you can be, while the sort of you're having your conversation about, trying to get the buyer to accept your deal or not or whatever. And the whole time people can be submitting actions if they want. But I don't know if that's going to make it too complicated, at least for this first version for our state machine. But I guess let's just cross that bridge in 2 minutes when we get there. Okay. Guard. What is a guard for buyer flips card? Nope, not that. We want to say, is the player flipping the card the current buyer? Is the deal okay? Well, that makes sense. Is the deal player the current buyer ID? Game state current buyer ID. If it isn't the event player, then false. That makes sense. This, I mean, obviously seems less likely, but sure, why not? Is the card index valid? Maybe let's say make sure the deal player has offered a deal. This, I think, should have already happened based on if you're in this state, by definition that should have happened, I think. But why not just add that too? Deal, and we'll just pull it out because we also want event.cardindex less than 0. Doesn't make sense. And event.cardindex greater than or equal to deal. Okay, wait, what is deal? Oh, sum. We want index. Find, that's what it is. Cool. That makes sense. Otherwise, is the card index revealed? Right. Otherwise, the card can be flipped. Great. Also, is it annoying that we have this all in, the context is all like double wrapped? Maybe this should just be, let's just do this for now. Right? Cool. And it'll just make things a little shorter. Oh, but now do we have to, no, right? Oh, we do need to fix that anyway, though. So we'll come back to that. Game state, get rid of those. And assign. Okay, what is changing? What's changing is deals. Context.deals. Okay, we're getting that. Deals event dot. Okay, we don't have a deal index. We have a player ID, so let's get copy the deals array, find the deal. This shouldn't happen, right? Because of the guard. But we'll put that in. Deals are revealed is true. Great. Don't need that. Flip the card. Find the deal. Flip the card. Return the deals array. Okay. That makes sense. Now let's go back and fix these errors. So this is from before, where we had deals and everything inside the phase type, but we stripped all that out because it wasn't helpful to have that in there. Let's go into context. We aren't setting game state, we're setting deals. Is that all we need to set? Yeah, right? Oh, great. It already knows. Deals, add in event.deal. We already have our guard, so that should be good. Let's close that up for now. Close that up for now. Okay, great. Let's see. Action window first. So I think it's where I wonder how to handle that best. This is where maybe keeping it two separate things could be better. I don't know. So what I'm thinking is we could have so the action windows, each player, any player, the buyer or the offerers, could play any actions they want during any of these action windows. And like, I guess let's keep in mind that the way we have it here is there's an action window before, then the buyer says, okay, I'm ready to accept a deal, play any last actions you want, then we have the action window. But really this is kind of all one phase of the buyer is thinking about each of the deals and possibly talking to the people offering the deals and deciding if they want to accept one or the other, or if they want to play action cards. So how do you know? So one thing is going to be passing that out to. So what has to happen here at accepting the deal is the buyer says, I'm ready to pick a deal, play your last action cards. So I don't know if that's a state change or if that's just a message that has to get broadcast out to each of the other deal offerers that says like last call, play your actions. And now I'm trying to think, how do you decide if you want to play a deal? So let's say you're not the buyer. I guess it could be if you're the buyer, it doesn't matter. But let's say you're not the buyer, you're one of the people offering the deals. Once you get into action window first, let's say, trying to envision how this might look when you're actually playing. It could pop up with, do I want to play an action card or pass? Someone else, let's say, doesn't matter, you play or you pass. As long as you have action cards, you can kind of always play them. Yeah, you can always play them, but do we want to have that, you say pass, someone else plays one, and that sort of cycles through of it gets carried out, whether that's like flipping a card or adding or removing a card or whatever. Does that mean then it's going to untoggle and say your option to play or pass just keeps popping back from pass to player pass? So, you hit pass, you have to hit pass again, you have to pass again. I guess we can say that and just see if that gets annoying when we test it out. But it seems like it could get annoying, and then you have to wait. The only way to transition out of here is to say, you have to have pass locked in, saying you're not going to play an action card. The buyer has to, in addition to, they also have to have pass on the action card locked in, and they have to have a deal selected and locked in. And then, once everyone's locked in, then you are good. Then you move on to the next phase. I don't know. Does that seem like that would get annoying? I guess maybe that doesn't matter for now, and we'll figure it out. But does that mean then that accepting deal should just sort of encompass all of this? And accepting deal should from here to there, and it has two types of events, or multiple types of events, I guess. It has actions, and it has the deal part of it, like selecting a deal. So it has play an action, it has pass on an action, it has accept a deal, or pick a deal, or whatever you want to call it. And then only when all of that is locked in do we change that. I think that makes the most sense to me for now. What do they call? Do they have accepting a deal is just what they call it in here? Let's just do that. So I'm just going to leave those commented out as a reminder to myself. On, I don't know what else goes in here. On action. Oh, that's interesting. No, I don't think that matters. Like play. I think that's something, I want to come back to, is figuring out if there's a smarter way to name these actions. And what would the target be? That's a good question. Yeah, if there's, because I think looking back in here, it seems like there's sort of a naming convention around like x.y or something. Like you might do, x.star, and that would include x.y and x.z. But let's just say it's because it's not defined up here, probably. Type play action. So we'll have play action. This kind of seems like it would be where we would do that. Let me see if I can find that again. State. machine, blah, blah, blah. Setup. Events. Feedback.get. Okay, yeah, let's do it here. So let's call it action.play, action.pass. Oh, cool. Yeah, there you go. That way, if we want to do any sort of like, I don't know, grouping there or something, we can do that. And then, I don't know, does this sort of mess up the convention if we don't deal.accept, or let's say deal.select. I want to make sure we lock in, we're able to lock in as you're playing each of these. Deal.select. It's kind of bothering me now that these are formatted differently, but that's okay. Okay, action play. So player ID string, and then card ID, I guess makes sense. Or is it just, is it just like the card, is it do we go by index? Do we go by just a card type? So what I'm thinking is, we could make it easier if it's just the card type. If you're playing a card, it doesn't matter the index. We don't have to think about that because it's just, I want to play a flip one, and you can just pull one, flip one out. Also, I think something else to keep in mind is, if I remember correctly, you can only play action cards in your collection. So you're not playing them from your hand. Your hand is what you use to make the deal. And then the deal is how cards show up in your collection, which is the face-up cards in front of you. So your collection is kind of just a set of cards, or bag of cards. So it kind of makes sense for this to be just the type. Wait, where was that? Here. And then what does card type look like? Oh, ID. Okay. The thing about card index here is flip card is coming from a player who can't see the card type. So that makes sense for that to be an index and not actually the type of the card. Yeah, whatever. Let's say card type. Or you know what? We'll keep it consistent for now, and just note to self, we'll come back to that. Action play, player ID, card index. So we're gonna need to make sure that's a action card and can be played. Um, then maybe I'm thinking this is something we could add to state here and say action history. Yeah. So I'm thinking we may also want to keep track of which players have sort of locked in and said that they're good to continue on to the next phase. Um, um, what do you want to call that? Action pass? Players. Note to self to come up with a better name to that later. But we'll just, push into here. You're going to have if you don't want to play an action, you hit lock in, I'm good. And then maybe that just keeps toggling off, meaning you keep getting pushed out of that array each time a new action happens or if a deal gets selected. Accepted deal. Let's do this too. I feel like it should be connected to the player who's offering the deal. Okay. Action pass. That's going to push you into that array. Action play is going to pop everyone out of that array. Accepted deal. Okay, but where is, I guess that's the last part. Is I feel like there should be something else like accepted deal confirmed. If that makes sense. So let's say I'm the buyer. I pick a deal and I lock it in, and that means the last call goes out. We want to be able to keep the selected deal in state and saying that I've selected a deal, which I guess also, by the way, is an information that's shared. Which one isn't shared with the other client machines? Then here, I'll put this in here just in case. Okay, yeah. So then accepted deal is, I guess that's where, first time around back at this state chart, the buyer picks a deal, they lock in. Then if any actions, the same way in this loop, if any actions are played in between, all the people who've passed get sort of popped out so that they get the chance to play more actions if they want. That's when which also I guess doesn't matter for this and for this. None of that matters until the buyer selects selects a deal that they want to buy. Right? Because there's no reason to pass, because you're just going to have to keep passing. So that makes sense. We're kind of going to prioritize deal select here. Deal select. Right? And then, in the events, should that be split up? Is the only thing I'm wondering. Okay, I think this might be a good place to stop for now. And I will come back to this maybe tomorrow. But yeah, cool. Thanks for watching, and I will see you later.